Welcome back to Nick Lenz, Comic Corner Classics / Non-Classics. This is episode number 1241 and Doubleshot number 1135. Now, the two trades basically I'm covering here are pretty much the issues that came out for these two respective series, both for Batman and The Flash, during pretty much their first year and a half of the time basically that were coming out. Though this Batman trade, mind you, actually skips some issues. Yes, this is actually Batman Second Chances. Yep. Now, this was released just a few years ago when DC still had this really odd logo. Now, this book contains issues 402 to 403 and 408 to 416, the main Batman series, and the 11th annual. Before I can talk about the series, let's talk about the annuals briefly for Batman. Yes, people know about Batman annuals. He's had annuals for a long time. Interesting thing when it comes to annual number 11 is the first annual to feature the post-crisis Batman. It is also the first annual to receive the original story because the first 10 annuals Batman were all reprints. Yep, first 10 annuals were reprints. Why the heck DC did this for? I have no idea. And this is something I thought was quite strange for all the characters DC, and yet Batman's got the most annuals. Yes, prior to DC relaunch in 2011, he had 28 annuals released. Yes, 28. In the previous volume for Batman, before this most recent one, he had 4 annuals, bringing up to about 32. The most recent volume for the series had put out about 2 I can think of, bringing it to about 34 annuals altogether. Now, most of these issues, I would say for 402, 403, and 408 to about 413 are done by Max Allan Collins. Yeah, he was the writer. He was basically the first regular writer of Bat Book at the Crisis Universe. Now, you probably think, okay, where's 401 and 404 to 407? 401 is a Legends tie-in. I will discuss that too here. As in the case of 404 to 407, that's Batman Year 1. So, my guess is, like in the case of what Death and Family did with Batman Cape Crusader Volume 1, why was the issue skipped over? Because people probably already had the trade anyways. I own the trade, so there's that. Now, here's interesting though. Jim Starlin drew issue 402, but he took over the writing duties with issue 414, and then he left with 430. So, this book is kind of basically the end of Jim Starlin's run. Yeah, I'll get my final thoughts when I finish here. Now, basically, 402 and 403 are simple, kind of basically in the way, kind of in, the first stories, they even have the cover in here. 402 was released in December of 1986. Yeah, and I love the artwork that Jim Starlin does. It looks so freaking good. Yep, this is just a one-shot issue of Batman just taking some thugs. It also did with the Imposter Batman. Not the first time he did with that, but that's literally what the issue is. It's him dealing with the Imposter Batman. Oh, and in case you're curious with the Bat costume, it's the Neil Adams costume that pretty much you would wear from the 70s up until 2000, the mid-90s. Yeah, and this pretty much takes up the first couple issues dealing with the Imposter Batman. Yeah, that's simply put what happens the first couple issues. Though Jim Starlin does not do 402, it's done by Dennis McCowan, which I believe was the artist for the Question Run, which came out during this period of time. Yeah. So, that's pretty much what Batman was doing for the first couple issues, right after Legends. Was deal with an Imposter. We also have good images of the Batcave, which still has the giant penny. And here's his Batmobile he had in the 80s. You're probably thinking, that's the Batmobile. It looks like a refurbished version, the 60s version of the Batmobile. Kind of it is, but his more definitive Batmobile come a little bit later. Yes. We also have Jason Todd appearing here, but it's not his new origin story. And we also get appearance by the Joker. Yep. Now, the thing with issue 408, now those of you, the people have probably saw this image thanks to look at Wikipedia when it comes to Jason Todd, and also this image appeared in the Outlaws. Jason Todd stealing the wheels of the Batmobile, which this is basically 408 is simply put of how basically Batman first met Jason Todd. That's put the backstory here. Though it's simply put told in the flashback because you have Jason Todd already Robin and they're fighting the Joker. Yep, the Joker. So it's kind of interesting though, post-crisis, that the first villain that Jason Todd fights is the Joker, and the last villain he fights before he actually dies. Yep, we also have guest appearances by Vicky Vale and Commissioner Gordon. Yep. And this is during a period of time when Bruce was dating Vicky Vale. Yep. And he was dating her. And pretty much, yeah, this is like during the whole period of time of basically Jason Todd being trained by Batman. Well, he basically just appointed him as Robin. And there's stuff they did with Crime Alley in these issues, which is quite nice. Leslie Tompkins is here. It's basically a lot like a series of like, it's not like a serialized story per se. It's a lot of like series of one-shot stories while dealing with basically Batman dealing with various different things. Also, in 410, you have Jason Todd take on Two-Face the first time. Interesting thing when it comes to Two-Face. Two-Face was actually revealed to be responsible for the death of Jason Todd's father. I think his name was William Todd, I believe his name was. Yeah, he pretty much was responsible for killing him, and basically he had this whole hostage crisis thing. And of course, they do a recap of basically Two-Face's backstory, where Sal Marioni, those acid in his face during when he was in court. Which, this backstory of how Two-Face got the way he is, this remained canon for a long, long time. This is the Golden Age version of the backstory for Two-Face. Which, when did they finally change it? This was changed in 2013. I don't know if it's still canon or not because, well, the new backstory is actually very negatively received because people like the original one. So, we have Jason Todd officially becoming Robin. Yeah, it's like slow instead of like immediate, like the way basically it was before. So, yeah, so that's pretty much what he does for these few issues. Like, takes on Two-Face, and that's what he finds out about his, basically, Jason finds out his father, Willis Todd, who was, well, he finds out that basically he killed him. Now, the artwork for 411, that's not done, that's actually done by David Cockrum. Yes, an actually artist who since passed away. Yes, he was famous basically for his run in Kenny X-Men. Yes, and he decided to jump DC to do some issues of Batman for some reasons. I'm not really sure why. Yep. And the artwork in these issues are actually pretty damn good. Yep. Though Max Allen Collins, this is 410, he would leave just a few issues later. And you have basically a new villain called Mime, who just appears this one issue, and that's it. Yeah, Mime is not that memorable villain. I mean, who knows who, like, better think, wait, Mime. Batman has a villain named Mime. Okay, fine, whatever. Yeah, she just appears for like one-off issue, and she's just a Kiss ripoff. Apparently she takes on Kiss, but not really. And then for 413, this is a really weird issue. Now, 412, yeah, that was the last issue Max Allen Collins did. Now, 413, that's done by Joe Duffy. Yes, Joe Duffy. Yes, the same woman who would take over the Catwoman title in the 90s, and also this is the same woman who also did the writing for Batman Iron Fist in the 70s. Her full name is Mary Jo Duffy, but she's also credited as Joe Duffy. But yeah, this is a woman. So you're probably thinking, wait, a woman writing Batman? Well, it wouldn't be the first one. 401 was also written by a woman as well. Taking on a samurai, that's interesting to say the least. I mean, aside from that, it's not really that notorious of an issue. Now, 414, this is the start of Jim Starlin's run. Oh, if you're curious still about the title New Adventures, yeah, this was actually dropped not long after this. They basically just said, oh yeah, New Adventures. Yep, and 414 is the start of Jim Starlin's very brief run he had for the book. I mean, I've seen writers who basically stand Batman longer than 17 freaking issues. And, well, a lot of these issues are, like I said, standalone stories. They would like a basically now this issue basically this was stabbing victims. That's basically what 414 does. 15 is a tie into Millennium. Yes. If you're curious though what the heck Millennium was, that was an event done by Steve Eichelhart, a guy who had previously wrote Batman back in the 70s. Yeah, we're involved like the Manhunters coming back, become a primal threat in DC Universe, first time since the 70s. I think it rare. Now, excuse me. Now, this is stuff outside of the main book, and basically, this is actually week 2 of this particular event. Yeah, that's simply put what this issue is. It's just basically a tie into Millennium. It's a great event where you have Jason Todd taking the frickin' Scarecrow. Yep, taking the frickin' Scarecrow. It's an interesting issue with Fear, and of course, we also have where apparently Jim Gordon was briefly replaced by a frickin' robot. Yeah, that's the thing about this story. A lot of people are replaced by robots. Also, we have appearance by the Phonic Man. Yes, he pops up in here too. 416 is the end. This is basically the last issue in here. 416 is a quite interesting issue and a very important one, mind you. It's Dick Grayson when he first meets Jason Todd. Also, if you're curious about the costume, that's Dick Grayson's disco costume. The one George Perez designed for him in New Teen Titans, Tales of New Teen Titans number 44. Yes, that was the first appearance of his costume, and he wore his costume up until the 90s. He wore it for quite some time. Yep, and basically, and the thing is basically, this was an obvious issue that Dick Grayson had to basically show up in because of Jason Todd being, Robin. And this was against it first, and eventually he just accepted it anyways, and he volunteered to become the trainer for Dick Grayson. Now, that's the last regular issue in the trade. The last thing he put in the trade is the annual. Here's A number 11, which features the Penguin team up with the third Clayface. Yes. Now, this is also done by Max Allan Collins. Yep. He's one of a few different writers. Actually, a few different stories in the book. Now, this one's called Lovebird. This is done by basically Max Allan Collins. Art by Norm Barfinger. He actually passed away just this year. Yeah, just basically Penguin being released from jail. It's a interesting issue, basically him trying to reform. It's like reading this issue, it kind of reminds me of an episode from Batman the Animated Series, where basically Penguin tries to reform, but he tries to, but he gets turned back into it. At least they try to anyways. It looks like that's the only story they put in here for some reason. Yeah, I'm not really sure why they put just one frickin' story, probably because Max Allan Collins writes the story. Yeah, there's actually one other story in here, but for some reason it's not here. Let's see if we can find it here. Let's see, the annual. Where are you? Annual number 11. Let's see. Oh, the trade itself I give a 9.5 out of 10. Now, the Clayface story is done by Alan Moore. Yes, Alan Moore does the Clayface story. Yep, it's just Clayface, the third. That's what he refers to him as. Basically, third Clayface. And this is the guy who later fell in love with the fourth Clayface, who was a woman. Yes, Lady Clayface. And they had a child together. Yes, they had a child. Basically, do with mannequins. It's a very oddest issue. But it's the only other story I can think of that Alan Moore has actually done for Batman. Because the thing is, when it comes to Alan Moore and Batman, he's done not a lot. I mean, the most famous thing he did for Batman was the Killing Joke. Yeah, this is the most famous Batman story he ever did. And one of his most well-known stories he did for comic books. It's a interesting issue. Interesting story. But it's not that memorable. It basically just takes him on, deals with models and stuff like that. It's nothing really noteworthy about it. Now, there's one other book I want to discuss here, and that's 401. An issue that was skipped over here. Even though, yes, it's a Legends tie-in, but for some reason, it's actually not here. This also features the second ever appearance of Magpie. Yes, Magpie. And yes, she dressed like this in the 80s. Though this character did make a return recently in the current comic books. And this issue says, Crossover Legends Chapter 1. Now this one, like I said with issue 413, this one's also written by, Barbara J. Randall. It's simply put just the Legends tie. Now, this artwork is done by Chad Von Eden. Great artist, by the way. It's just basically Batman dealing with the events of Legends. And it's just basically just him Alec Hostile out of the issue. Just a not a very noteworthy issue. He just goes to a party, slips like costume, fights some people, and of course people are ranting about superheroes, well, against superheroes. Magpie appears here, where apparently, like, she takes on Jason Todd, where apparently he nearly takes off her top. Yeah, basically just, like, got her, and then he ends up basically almost taking off her shirt. And she's like, Brat. Yeah, and you basically see her. It's almost like Jason Todd didn't really. Now this is Jason Todd basically doing this, and yeah, he just saw Magpie topless. Yes, Magpie, because he accidentally ripped her top. I'm like, okay, fine. And of course, like some other goons. Magpie, of course, apparently fixed her shirt in time, even though she's pretty much her shirt was ruined. Like, oh yeah, shiny things, because, well, Magpie, birds love shiny things. And she cries, then she's handed off to jail, and that's it. It's a oddball of an issue, and would I recommend reading it? Oh yes. I mean, if you're a fan of basically seeing Jason Todd simply rip a woman's top, which I found quite hilarious, the fact he did it in Magpie. He did such a hilarious fashion, that's the only reason I would recommend it. Yes, next up is a Flash trade. Yes, a Flash trade. Like in the case of Second Chances, it pretty much details Flash's basically first year and a half post-crisis. Yep. Now the cover, when it comes up here, this is the cover for Savage Velocity. It's a very good cover. Yeah, it's basically the cover they use for issue 1. Savage Velocity is, the title itself basically is just Flash for a few issues takes on Vandal Savage. Now, there's 2 writers listed here. Mike Baron, who did the first 12 issues of this run. Yeah, he left. I actually went to a Comic-Con he was going to be at. For some strange reason, he actually was not at the table. He was actually going to talk about this, of why he left after a year. But the guy with him said that the reason why he left after a year, contract. That's simply the reason for it. Willie Messner-Loebs took over issue 13, and he actually stayed with the book to issue 61. I actually found out last year, apparently he's actually homeless. Yes, Willie Messner-Loebs is homeless now. I'm like, how the heck is this even possible? I mean, from what I heard, the reason why he's homeless, because apparently he never went to Comic-Con, and in fact he just... Yeah, it's kind of weird. This was actually mentioned by some guy on Twitter who actually found Loebs on the streets. Yeah, this happened just recently. I don't know if he's gotten better or he basically got an apartment now, but that's what happened with Willie Messner-Loebs. He's homeless. Now, the artwork in here is done by Jack Goose, who does the majority of the artwork in here with Mike Collins and Greg LaRouche. The cover art is done by Jason Goose and Larry Messon. This contains the first 18 issues of Flash Volume 2 and the first annual, which Baron does write the book. Now, here's the cover of the first issue. Like, here's the cover. And the first issue... Now, these issues have debut of 2 characters. Namely, Dr. Tina McGee. You're probably thinking, Dr. Tina McGee? That name sounds so familiar. Oh yeah, she appeared on the Flash 90 TV show and on the Flash 2014 series. Played by the same actress. This run introduced her. And by the end of this particular run of issues, she stopped appearing in the book. Mainly because the thing is, she was in a relationship with the Flash because she actually helped Wally with his powers for a lot of period of time. And of course, they fell in love. At several points, it looked like they've shown that these two had previously, that at some point, apparently off panel, these two had sex. Yes, this was shown a few times in this whole run. And this run also introduced the character Kilgore. You're probably thinking, wait, Kilgore? Now, apparently the guy from Emerging Awesome, when he did a review when Ed Kilgore first showed up, he thought he was just the computer from the JLI run. No, that's not what he made for his appearance. It was this run. That's when he first showed up here. And well, there's the recurring thing with this one is that Wally. Now the thing is, Wally is not living Keystone City. He's living some other place. Let's see if I can find it here. Go back to it. Let's see. He's living in New York. Yeah, he lives in New York basically for. Well, he starts out in New York, then he moves out to like the suburbs, and the first issue has a guest appearance by the Teen Titans, which is great because he was still a member of the team at the time, despite the fact he was the Flash. Now, in case you're curious, though, when he first joined the Justice League, he actually became part of the Europe branch during Loebs' run, mind you. And it was interesting, though, that, well, Vandal Savage is the first villain he fights when he starts off the series. Yeah. And he only appears... Now, this is what Vandal Savage looks like in the book. Like, wow. Dressed like he's from the 17th century. Because he's a caveman. Of course he does. Now, he initially appears just for the first couple issues. And then he disappears. Yeah, he doesn't return again until like issue 13 when Messner-Loebs takes in the book. Now, he initially has dating this one blonde woman who's with him, but the relationship lasts long because he ends up dating Tina McGee, and this lasts for a very good period of time. This lasts up until like around issue 18, where this trade ends, and that's the end of the relationship. Tina McGee disappeared. As far as I can tell, she disappeared. Like, as far as I can tell, she never returned, and here she is, Dr. Tina McGee, this beautiful woman. That's her right there in the panel. Yep, first appearance, and she wears a t-shirt. Now, from what I can tell from the Flash TV show from the 90s and this, it seems as though that they adapt a lot from this early run, except they put Barry Allen in the place of Wally West. Now, in the show, the Flash 90s series, he's played by John Wesley Shipp, who later reprised the character on the Flash TV show a couple times for Elseworlds and for Crisis on Infinite Earths. And of course, the actor also played Henry Allen, the father of Barry Allen, and he also played Jay Garrick. Yep, played Jay Garrick, which is cool as heck he did that. Yep. Oh yeah, and he's from Earth 3, that version. Yeah, Wally spends a lot of time fighting robots, and then I think after the first like few issues, he basically just, well, has the annual, which basically some of the regular creative team of the Flash. Here's the cover for the annual. It basically Wally taking on like some goons, and it just basically it's like this annual just thrown out there just because, and that's simply the reason for it. Yeah. Also, at one point, Wally was living in a mansion during this set of issues, and then he got evicted by the landlord. Why? Just cause. Well, actually because he didn't like the fact he basically had superpowers. So he evicted him. Despite the fact that he was in the hospital, and he got the eviction notice after he got out of the hospital, that's why he missed the payment. Oh yeah, and this he also takes on some martial artists and face like this dragon group, which only lasts just for this one story. Now, it wouldn't be the first time he go off to an Asian country for an annual. He actually did this in the 90s for one of the annuals. And then issue 5 introduces basically a storyline where Wally meets Tina McGee's husband, Jerry McGee. You might be thinking, husband? Yeah, her estranged husband. Which they got back together, and that's the reason why she was written off, because she basically hooked back up with her husband. Well, from what I can tell, he was abusive toward... Well, it looked like she was a very abusive husband, and then eventually they got back together somewhat when he turned into this person known as the Speed Demon. Yep, which his powers went freaking haywire. This lasted for several issues of taking this guy, and this is only just in the first, like, barely a year into the run, and Barry is already finding, like, his girlfriend's estranged husband. And, yeah, it's fantastically written by Mike Baron, though I do appreciate, though, that the writer of this run does wrap up this storyline prior to relieving the whole thing with the estranged husband, but it takes Willie Messner-Loebs, the successor writer, to write off the character of Tina McGee. And, of course, he goes to Russia for an issue, which that was really interesting. Yep. Oh, come on, seriously. Yeah, he goes to Russia for an issue to deal with these like particular people. It was part of a storyline in the book. And then issue 8 is a tie-in to Millennium Week 1, Purple Haze, which continues from the previous story arc with the Russians. Yep, and this is Wally's basically what he was doing in Millennium. Yeah, he fought robots too. Though this event did end the Boost to Gold series. And issue 5 is also tied into it, which uses the character the Chunk. He was a recurring character in the book. He occasionally appeared. He didn't appear very much, but he appeared a few times in this book. And of course, yes, you have guest appearances by Cyborg and various members of Teen Titans. Then we have the Savage Speedster. Yeah, where he goes like back in time to caveman times with the Chunk and a few other people. Yeah, this lasts for a few issues, and he goes back to present day. Yep, goes back to present day, like right after the storyline wraps up. Yeah. Though, and then he has to take on this money villain, which that was kind of weird. Yep. Yeah. And then with issue number 12, we have the return of Vandal Savage, first time since issue number 2. Yep. Vandal Savage returns for issue 12, which is actually toward the end of, I thought it was 12 was the end of the run. Nope. It was actually, I think it was 13. Yeah, 13 I think was like the end of his run. Because Mike Baron was not in the book very long. No, he had a very short run in the book. Yep. Then we have like this weird thing happen here where various characters, like, their clothes just basically disappear for like no explained reason. Because Chunk basically does it to a couple of characters who are assaulting Wally's mother. And she's like, of course, he basically caused these two people basically the clothes disappear. All because they were assaulting Wally's mom, so he protected her, and of course, well, that was issue 13. Nope, 14, yep. Still has basically Vandal Savage fear here. Yeah, it's interesting to know that he basically did this toward the end of his run. Yep. Oh yeah, and toward the end of the run, in the last issue, that's when Wally's mom finds out about the fact that he's dating a married woman. Yep. And then for the next few issues, simply put, Loebs probably was not a really big fan of the relationship at all. So he basically had Wally and Tina break up and have Tina go back with her husband. That's just my theory, because he probably didn't like the fact that, and this is just my theory, I've never met the guy in person. He probably didn't like the fact that a well-established superhero like the Flash was dating a married woman. So he had to break up with her. They break up and she goes back to her husband. So that's why he introduced Linda Parker, was actually not married. And then we have the last few issues called The Speed McGee, which just deals with, well, Tina reconnecting with her husband and Wally getting evicted from his house. Yeah, kind of an odd way to end the trade, but that's how the trade ends, basically, with this one storyline. This trade's got very awesome covers for these issues. Yep, and of course, they get some Brute. And yeah, here's the issue where, oh yeah, the guys basically try to assault basically various people. Though, luckily enough that, well, Chunk basically wasn't happy with, who basically is probably good friends with Wally's mom. So, basically, as a thank you for helping him out, she was hired as his secretary. She's like, I need a job, I need a secretary. And they just laugh it off, and that probably caused her to get hired by him. Yep. And I do appreciate, though, that Loebs does write the relationship off very nicely between Tina and Wally. And, well, that's it. That's the end of the trade. And this is overall a good start to the run. Now, I'm hoping my friend TV, I'm sure he would probably love to get his hands on this particular trade because he loves the Wally West character. He's more bigger fan of him than I am. Because when he got into reading comic books, he was basically the Flash. Me, excuse me, when I got into reading DC Comics, Barry Allen was back being the Flash. Though this was a year prior to Flashpoint happening. Excuse me. Yeah. But this trade overall, I give it roughly a 9.5 out of 10. It's a damn good trade and a great start to Wally West's time as the Flash. Yep. So since I reviewed this particular book, now in the case of Loebs' run for the book, basically he would start with issue 15 and he would leave. I thought it was actually 13 he came on board. No, it was actually 15 he came on board. Yeah, he came on there and then he left issue 61. Yeah, he stayed for quite some time. Of course, it was actually one of two books he was working on in the 90s. The other, of course, being Wonder Woman. Yep, he worked on Wonder Woman also. But all in all, great trade to read, and I do recommend people who are fans of the Wally West Flash. And basically, well, if you're a fan of basically Mike Baron's work, I would recommend this because the guy basically does very good work here. And if you're basically curious about Wally West's early years, check this out. Basically, it just basically details his first year and a half of his time as the Flash. Publication-wise, from like 1987 to about maybe like 1989-ish. Yeah, it doesn't get out of the 90s, mind you, when you read this trade, but it gets pretty close to it. To get out of the 80s into 90s. So yeah, that's a particular review. I might have one more review coming today. It just depends. But until this next video, bye.